The world hides beauty in its most dangerous corners, towering peaks, treacherous waters, unforgiving deserts. For some, the call of these extremes is irresistible, but adventure often comes at a cost. In this video, we uncover 5 tragic real-life stories of individuals who ventured into Earth's deadliest places and never came back. These are chilling reminders of nature's unforgiving power. On July 18, 2023, 71-year-old Steve Curry laced up his hiking boots and headed out for what was supposed to be just another adventure. A seasoned outdoorsman from Sunland, California, Steve had spent his life chasing the thrill of the wild, rock climbing, mountain biking, hiking through the harshest terrain he could find. To him, nature wasn't something to fear, it was home. That morning, he set off into Death Valley National Park, one of the most unforgiving landscapes on Earth. The sun was already blazing, and by the afternoon, the temperature had climbed to a blistering 121 degrees Fahrenheit, 49 degrees Celsius. Most people were staying inside, or, at the very least, far from the scorching desert trails. But not Steve. He had hiked from Golden Canyon to Zabriskie Point, a popular lookout that offers panoramic views of the arid, surreal landscape. There, he ran into a reporter from the Los Angeles Times. The heat was brutal. When asked why he'd chosen to hike in such extreme conditions, Steve just smiled and said, "Why not?" He was wearing a sun hat, sunscreen, and carried a backpack, confident and prepared. Or so it seemed. What many forget, or simply don't realize, is that Death Valley doesn't play fair. It's the hottest place on the planet, home to the world record temperature of 134 degrees Fahrenheit, 57 degrees Celsius, recorded back in 1913. The canyon walls don't just hold the heat, they amplify it, bouncing the sun's rays back at you from every direction. Even seasoned hikers can find themselves overwhelmed. Steve continued his trek despite warnings from park officials about the dangers of venturing out after mid-morning. As he made his way back toward the trailhead, the unrelenting heat finally caught up with him. Around 3:40 p.m., just steps from a restroom near the Golden Canyon trailhead, Steve collapsed. Bystanders rushed to help and called 911. Park rangers arrived quickly and performed CPR, even using a defibrillator in hopes of reviving him. But it was too late. Steve had succumbed to the intense heat. He died doing what he loved, but underestimating one of the most dangerous forces in nature. Back home, his wife, Rima, had no idea where Steve had gone that morning. She expected him to walk through the door later that day, tired but smiling. Instead, she found a coroner's notice pinned to their front door. Her worst fear had come true. Speaking to reporters afterward, Rima painted a picture of a man who was endlessly curious, fearless, and full of life. Steve loved sleeping under the stars, cooking by campfire, and pushing himself on rugged trails. But she also shared a sobering truth. The heat, she said, is not a foe you can overcome. Death Valley's dangers are real, and they don't discriminate. The park is vast, mostly unshaded, and nearly void of natural water sources. Even experienced hikers like Steve can fall victim to heat stroke when the body's cooling system shuts down, leading to dizziness, confusion, unconsciousness, and, in severe cases, death. The location where Steve collapsed is far from immediate help. High temperatures in the area also make helicopter rescues more difficult or even impossible. That same summer, another man died after his car's air conditioning failed, leaving him stranded in the intense heat. Death Valley saw 29 days of 110 degrees Fahrenheit, plus temperatures that season alone. Still, people keep coming. Some are drawn by the challenge. Others simply don't realize the risk until it's too late. Park rangers continue to urge visitors, avoid hiking after 10 a.m., stay hydrated, wear light clothing, and most importantly, know when to turn back. Steve Curry was no amateur. He respected nature, but in the end, even a lifetime of experience wasn't enough to outmatch Death Valley. His story serves as a powerful reminder. Adventure is thrilling, but survival always comes first. As Rima said, the heat is not a foe you can overcome, and sometimes knowing when not to go is the bravest thing you can do. On October 30th, 2019, Deng Yuqiang, a bright university senior from Hunan, China, set out on what she hoped would be a memorable adventure. She was heading to the Huashan Scenic Area in Shanxi Province, a place known not just for its jaw-dropping beauty, but also for its reputation as one of China's most dangerous hikes. Towering peaks, sheer cliffs, and thrilling trails attract thousands every year, and Deng was excited to experience it for herself. Like many travelers today, Deng wanted to document her journey. She posted photos and updates throughout her hike, sharing the stunning scenery and her joy with friends and family back home. Everything seemed to be going well, but none of them could have known those would be the last photos she'd ever post. Her final stop was the West Peak Observation Deck, a popular viewing spot perched high above the ground. The view from there is nothing short of spectacular, with panoramic sights that stretch across the rugged mountainscape. But there was a catch. The safety railings at that deck were shockingly low, just about 60 centimeters high, barely reaching an adult's thigh. Like many tourists, Deng wanted a perfect shot to mark the moment. She stood near the edge, adjusting her phone for the best angle. With her back to the drop, she leaned in slightly to get it just right, but the surface beneath her was uneven, and in a split second her foot slipped. She lost her balance and fell backward over the railing. The drop was over 2,000 meters. No one noticed immediately. It wasn't until the next day that search and rescue teams located her body. Security footage later confirmed what had happened. Deng had slipped while taking a selfie. There were 5 tourists and 2 staff members on the deck that day, but no one could react quickly enough to stop the tragedy. In the aftermath, the Huashan Scenic Area Management addressed the incident but denied any fault. According to them, the railing met safety standards, and Deng's fall was the result of her own actions. They initially offered her family a sum of 40,000 yuan, about $5,700, as humanitarian aid, but again accepted no responsibility. Her family was devastated and outraged. To them, the idea that 60-centimeter railings were considered safe on a mountaintop observation deck was absurd. They also criticized the delayed response in locating Deng after her fall, arguing that faster action might have made a difference. The family questioned whether park staff had truly warned tourists about the risks. Management claimed they had, but Deng's loved ones weren't convinced. They believed that with stronger barriers and better precautions, this tragedy could have been prevented. As public pressure grew and media coverage intensified, the park eventually increased the offer to 170,000 yuan, about $24,000. But even then, they continued to insist they weren't to blame. Deng's death sparked wider conversations about safety in popular but hazardous tourist destinations like Huashan Mountain. Despite its beauty, the mountain is infamous for its narrow trails, vertical drops, and sections where visitors must walk on wooden planks bolted to cliff sides. Official fatality numbers are hard to come by, but it's believed that dozens may lose their lives there each year. Deng's story became a chilling reminder of how easily things can go wrong when we underestimate the dangers of nature, especially in the pursuit of that perfect photo. Her family fought not just for compensation, but for accountability and for better safety measures so no one else would suffer the same fate. Still, the park held its ground, claiming the tragedy was unavoidable. Today, Huashan continues to draw thousands of thrill seekers, its risks unchanged. And Deng Yuqiang's story remains a haunting reminder that behind every breathtaking view, danger can quietly wait just one step away. It was a clear, crisp evening in January 2025 when 21-year-old Eve McCarthy set out for a climb in southern Spain. A final-year physiology student from Shankill, Dublin, Eve was no stranger to adventure. That day, she and a male climbing partner had chosen the stunning yet notoriously dangerous trail near El Caminito del Rey, a place as breathtaking as it is deadly. This former workers' path, built into the cliffs of El Chorro Gorge, is now a tourist hotspot for thrill seekers. The trail hugs the rock face hundreds of feet above the ground, with sections so narrow that a single misstep could be fatal. And while it's been renovated in recent years, many parts remain treacherous. especially near the Swiss sector and Arabic staircase, where Eve was climbing. Around 7 p.m. as they began their descent through a particularly unstable section, something went terribly wrong. Both Eve and her climbing partner lost their footing. He managed to grab onto a bush-covered rock, miraculously stopping his fall. Eve wasn't as lucky. She plunged nearly 500 feet into the ravine below. Despite the quick response of emergency crews, she had not survived. Her climbing partner was rescued alive, shaken but safe. Eve's body was recovered shortly afterward. The news of her death shook not only her family and friends, but the wider community back home in Dublin and the outdoor world alike. Shockingly, hers was the second fatal fall on that same stretch of trail within a month. Back in Shankill, Eve was remembered as so much more than just a victim of a tragic accident. She was vibrant, outgoing, and full of energy, the kind of person who made friends wherever she went. She worked part-time at King's Pub in Dalkey, where she was known for her quick wit, infectious laugh, and ability to light up a room. The pub closed its doors for 3 days in her honor. Her parents, Helen and Paul McCarthy, were heartbroken. In a moving tribute, they described Eve as a bright light in the lives of everyone who knew her, fiercely determined, endlessly curious, and always kind. She had a passion for basketball, and though she wasn't the tallest on the court, her speed and grit made her a force to be reckoned with. Friends remembered how their house was always full. Eve had that way of bringing people together. Whether it was for a spontaneous road trip or a late-night chat over tea, she was always up for an adventure. That adventurous spirit is part of what led her to Spain and to Caminito del Rey. Her funeral at St. Anne's Church in Shankill was packed. So many came that some had to watch the service from the parish center, and even online, former classmates, neighbors, co-workers, and teammates all gathered to say goodbye, sharing memories of the girl who never stopped moving, dreaming, or laughing. Eve's passing served as a grim reminder of the risks that come with high adrenaline travel. Just a month earlier, a 20-year-old British climber lost his life in the same area. Despite new safety measures, such as handrails, harness lines, and repaired walkways, the trail still poses real danger. The altitude, unstable ground, and narrow paths make it unforgiving even for seasoned climbers. Eve McCarthy's life was cut short far too soon, but her impact was undeniable. She was a spark, someone who lived boldly and loved deeply. Her story is one of adventure, spirit, and heartbreaking loss. Though she's no longer here, the people who loved her carry her memory forward every day. And for those who walk dangerous paths, her story is a reminder to never take a single step for granted. It was a cold, rainy day, November 27, 2017, deep in the Chernobyl exclusion zone in Ukraine. Dmitry Shkinder, a 33-year-old urban explorer from Zhodzina, Belarus, was doing what he loved most, venturing into places most people wouldn't dare step foot in. This time, his destination was Chernobyl 2, a heavily restricted military zone tucked within one of the most radioactive regions on Earth. Dmitry wasn't alone. He was joined by 2 friends, a man and a woman, both fellow explorers. They were part of a niche community known as stalkers, urban adventurers who illegally sneak into forbidden or abandoned areas. For them, the risk was part of the thrill, and in this world, Chernobyl is the ultimate prize. After the 1986 nuclear disaster, Chernobyl and the surrounding areas were evacuated and sealed off, left to decay in silence. But the ruins attracted a different kind of visitor, people like Dmitry, drawn by mystery, danger, and the ghostly remains of a world frozen in time. Chernobyl, too, in particular, was infamous. Hidden behind fences and radiation signs stood the Tunga radar, a massive Cold War relic, 150 meters tall, made of rusted steel beams and eerie, decaying platforms. Once used to detect incoming missiles, it now loomed like a skeleton over the forest, calling to explorers like a siren. But this wasn't a good day for climbing. The weather was rough. Strong winds and steady rain had turned every metal rung slick and treacherous. Still, Dmitry and his male friend couldn't resist. They wanted to reach the top of the Tunga, to conquer one of the most iconic and illegal climbs in the world. Their female companion stayed on the ground, watching. Dmitri was no amateur. He had years of experience exploring decaying buildings and forgotten ruins. He was known for being careful, methodical, even in dangerous conditions. But no amount of skill could protect him from what happened next. As they climbed higher into the storm, a powerful gust of wind hit. The rain-slicked steel offered no grip. In a split second, Dmitri slipped. He fell 15 meters, his body slamming against the cold metal structure before crashing down. His friend could do nothing but scream for help. Emergency services were called, and an ambulance arrived quickly, but it was already too late. Dmitri didn't survive the fall. The urban exploration community was stunned. Dmitri had a reputation for being cautious, someone who respected the risks. His death hit hard. To make it even more haunting, just moments before he fell, Dmitri had taken one final photo, an eerie snapshot from high above the trees, capturing the view from the top of the radar. It would be the last thing he ever saw. The tragedy didn't end with his fall. Authorities responded swiftly. His two companions, despite their shock, were charged with illegally entering a restricted zone. Both were fined, and the woman, who had never even left the ground, faced deportation. Dmitri's body was transported back to Belarus, where a grieving wife and 3 children waited for a husband and father who would never return. His death became a sobering reminder. Even the most experienced explorers aren't invincible. Chernobyl, too, remains a chilling monument, not just to Soviet history, but to the dangers of pushing past the boundaries of safety in search of adrenaline. Urban explorers still sneak into the zone, driven by curiosity, thrill, or the desire for the perfect photo. But Dmitri's story stands as a warning. Some places are abandoned for a reason, and sometimes the cost of adventure is a price too high to pay. It was a crisp Saturday in 2015 when 24-year-old Kristi Kafkalautis laced up her boots for a hike she'd dreamed about since arriving in Norway. A student from Melbourne on exchange at the University of Bergen, Kristi was studying music and cultural studies. She was full of life, drawn to the outdoors, and always up for a challenge. Tunga, Norway's dramatic cliff jutting 700 meters above Lake Ringedalsvatnet, was the perfect adventure. The trail to Tunga is no easy stroll. It's a long, steep hike over rocky terrain, and conditions can be unpredictable. But for thrill seekers and nature lovers, the view from the tongue-shaped rock formation makes every step worth it. That day, Kristi and 2 friends joined a larger group of around 30 hikers making the trek together. After hours of climbing, they finally reached the summit. The scenery was stunning: sheer cliffs, glacial lakes, and that famous ledge drawing tourists from all over the world. People posed for photos, edged toward the cliff for the perfect shot, and soaked in the beauty around them. Kristi and her friends waited their turn, chatting and taking in the view. When another group began taking photos near the edge, Kristi stepped aside, moving along a narrow side path to avoid getting in their way. It wasn't for a photo. It wasn't a dare. It was a simple, courteous move, but the ground beneath her feet was unstable, littered with loose rocks. And then it gave way. There was no cry for help, no scream, just silence. Her friends, only steps ahead, turned around to find she was gone. Panic set in. Witnesses who saw the fall rushed to help, but there was little anyone could do. The terrain was remote, with poor cell service, and it took hours for emergency crews to arrive. A helicopter touched down just before midnight, but recovery would have to wait until the following day. Back in Australia, Kristi's family received the devastating news. Rumors quickly circulated that she'd fallen while taking a selfie, but her mother, Millie, was quick to correct the story. Kristi hadn't been showing off or standing at the edge. She had simply been stepping aside when tragedy struck. Bringing Kristi home was another challenge. Norwegian authorities needed time to complete investigations, and it took 10 agonizing days before her body could be returned to her family. Kristi's accident was the first fatality recorded at Tunga. It sparked conversations about safety on the trail. There were no barriers, and many hikers arrived unprepared for the physical demands of the climb. Tour guides reported injuries and rescues every season, and the trail's growing popularity on social media had only increased the risks. Christy was adventurous, kind, and full of promise. She wasn't just a tourist. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend. Her passing was a cruel reminder that nature, while breathtaking, doesn't forgive small missteps. To those who knew her, Troll Tunga will never be just a hiking trail again. It's where a bright light was lost too soon.